Alrighty, what's up, everybody? Appreciate the folks who are in here. We got more every week. I like that. I'm going to keep doing this, or at least until we. Guess we only have a couple of these left. That basketball game was annoyingly long, wasn't it? So, here to talk about the 2024 college football playoff rankings when they get revealed here in a minute, live on ESPN. If anybody has any questions, thoughts, anything, please throw them in the chat. Happy to answer them, talk about them, what have you. T. Davidson says, rank Georgia Tech, you cowards. They're a tough team. I had Georgia Tech. Let's see where I had them. I have Georgia Tech ranked 30th because I have them behind Louisville because they lost to Louisville and or Syracuse. I don't remember. Maybe one or both. But it gets a little weird when you're kind of past like 2021. Then you're kind of grasping at straws to figure out who should be there. Dalton Melton says FSU #1. How about the Seminoles? Finally getting a victory over Charleston Southern FCS. Win's a win. Celebrate it. Got to enjoy it. My biggest questions coming into the rankings here: where is Miami? Where is SMU? Can either of them afford a loss in the ACC championship and stay in? Where is Indiana? Are they safe? I think they probably will be. I have them at #9. And then I guess where is Alabama? Because I do think the door is still open for Alabama to get in. I know ESPN was mentioning South Carolina, Clemson. Do they have a chance? I don't think so. I don't think they should. Clemson lost to Georgia. I don't know how you can have Clemson ahead of Alabama or Ole Miss. The rankings do, the polls do. Clemson ahead of Ole Miss and Alabama, despite Clemson getting trounced by Georgia. I don't think that should happen. But if that's where they end up here, if they end up at number 12 or so ahead of Alabama, you beat South Carolina, maybe you do have a chance. I won't entertain the Clemson conversation until they've beaten somebody of note. South Carolina would be that. Then we'll get to it. But until then, I don't know. Curious where Arizona State is, too. How are they relative to Boise State? Boise State has been struggling. For anybody who did not watch that Wyoming game, was pretty ugly. Had to come back against San Jose State and did not look great against Nevada before then. I think we're going to start the rankings. Here we go. Number 25, Colorado. It's a pretty steep drop, dropping 9 places to number 25. I had Colorado at 20. Number 24, Kansas State. They move in from being unranked. That makes sense. And they should be ahead of Colorado because they beat Colorado. Number 23, Illinois. Becomes a better and better win for Penn State. If that comes into play at all. Brett Bielema was doing a really good job there. He's not getting talked enough for the job he did this season. Number 22, UNLV. And because Colorado State lost to Fresno State, as long as UNLV beats Nevada, it'll be UNLV Boise for the Mountain West Championship. Do not count out UNLV winning that game. But also, it would be another good win for Boise if they win. Number 21, Missouri. So far, I've got no real problems with this. Number 20, Texas A&M, dropping 5 spots. That's a pretty big fall. I think I had A&M at number 18 myself. But look, I'm going to be in College Station. I'll be there Friday for Midnight Yell. I'll be at the game on Saturday. I'm looking more forward to that game than any game in like a really long time. We talked about it on the Until Saturday podcast. If you haven't listened, actually, no, that episode's going to be out tomorrow, so go look for that, I guess. Number 19, BYU. That's a pretty far drop. I had BYU at 16. BYU dropping 5 spots for a close loss to Arizona State. Number 18, Iowa State. That means Iowa State's ranked ahead of BYU. I don't know about that, but doesn't really matter. All that matters is who makes the Big 12 championship game at this point. None of these teams are getting an at-large bid. 9 teams are still in the mix. Tulane, number 17. They're good, by the way. If Boise wins, they are in prime position to take that group of 5 spot if they beat Army. Tulane-Memphis is the only Thanksgiving game for college football this year, Thursday night. Tulane-Memphis, both teams 9-2. If you want some college football on Thanksgiving, watch that game. That's going to be a really good game. Number 16, Arizona State. That is low. I'm surprised. They're 9-2, but one of those losses was to Cincinnati when they didn't have their quarterback, Sam Levitt. South Carolina up to number 15. This means Clemson's going to be probably closer than I think they should be. Why? It doesn't matter because they're playing each other, but I don't understand how you can put Clemson ahead of South Carolina, like at all. But that's why we play the games. Number 14, Ole Miss. They're probably out. It's hard to see a path for Ole Miss, which is tough. This was the year you go all in. They had the team to do it. I thought they could have won it all, honestly. But they go and lose to Florida. A pretty ugly game. I wonder how far these rankings are going to go before we get to the bracket. I'm going to tweet something about Clemson at some point here and get everybody really mad at me. Number 13, Alabama, which means Clemson's probably going to be top 12. Okay, Dalton Melton says, what would you think the committee does if Texas A&M wins Saturday and then loses to Georgia close? Probably not in. I mean, they're down at 20 right now. The question is where Texas falls if they lose. I think Texas could honestly fall out still, probably, if they lose. By the way, anybody, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, I'm trying to grow this thing as the season goes on. Throw up a lot of YouTube shorts, a lot of the clips we do from the Until Saturday podcast. So if you haven't, just please hit that subscribe button. Doesn't cost anything. Number 12, Clemson. Why? I'm gonna tweet this and get Clemson people mad at me. I'm hesitant to say like, hey, if one team loses, Alabama's in, or if one team loses, Clemson's in, or whoever, because like these games got to play. Like Auburn could beat Alabama. Like clearly, Alabama is not that good of a team. Boise State, number 11, which is fine. That means they're going to be the number 4 seed here because they're ahead of the top Big 12 teams again. I don't know if it's going to play out that way in the end. I know Brett Yormark made some comments. Pretty fair ones that Arizona State blew out Wyoming while Boise State played Wyoming close. It is a fair point. We got to kind of see how things play out. I still think it's likely the Big 12 champ probably gets that first round bye, but like so Clemson is going to be your first team out of the field. They still got to play South Carolina. It'll sort itself out. But number 10, Indiana. Yeah, so Indiana's in. As long as they don't lose to 1-10 Purdue, who was awful, they are in. Number 9, SMU. It's a good spot. I still think SMU should be ahead of Miami. I don't understand why they're not. If you flip the logos on the side of the helmet, my SMU would be higher. It just really is. Just really is what the case is. SMU, number 9, number 8, Tennessee. And I think from here on out, it's going to be pretty easy to understand. I had SMU a bit higher. Where did I have SMU? I have SMU at number 8 in Indiana 9, Tennessee 7, Georgia 6. This means Miami's going to be number 7 now, probably, which I still don't get. Georgia number 7. Miami's going to be 6? Okay. Anyway, if Tennessee beats Vanderbilt, they're in, which that could be an interesting game. We'll see. Don't know what will happen with the ACC championship game. Miami number 6. Miami's at the point where like it feels like they're a lock. I mean, they got to beat Syracuse. They got to go to Syracuse, which could be a very tough game. These things are not set in stone by any means. But it feels like Miami could beat Syracuse, lose to SMU, and they're guaranteed in. SMU losing ACC championship, I do not know for sure, but it does seem like Miami is high enough now where if they lose an ACC championship game, they should be safe. The committee. Number 5, Notre Dame. I moved Notre Dame up to number 5 as well. I know Notre Dame fans were very mad at me because I had them at 10 prior. I said if you beat Army and take care of business, you'll leap over those SEC teams. They did. Then the carnage, plus all the carnage happened anyway. Notre Dame, you win, you beat USC, you got a home game. That's pretty much all you could ask for. Should Notre Dame be behind Penn State, who's going to be number 4 here? I say yes for now because that Northern Illinois loss is still so bad for Notre Dame. But if Notre Dame beats USC handily, USC who took Penn State to overtime, I think you'll see Notre Dame jump Penn State. Gotta tweet that. All right, so here's how the bracket looks. Number 1 seed Oregon, number 2 seed Texas, number 3 seed Miami, number 4 seed Boise State, and number 12 seed Arizona State. Home games would be Ohio State, Notre Dame, Penn State, and Georgia. So 4 pretty good stadiums to hold a first round playoff game. Not gonna lie, that's gonna be a lot of fun. So the 5-12 would be Ohio State, Arizona State, with the winner to play Boise State. The 8-9 would be Georgia, Tennessee at Georgia. The winner plays Oregon. I don't know if the committee's really going to allow those rematches. They say they won't. There's no rule that they can or can't. I'll believe it when I see it to do a first round rematch of the regular season. 6-11 is Penn State, Indiana, which is a Big Ten game, but they haven't played each other, so it's not a rematch. And then the 7-10 would be who we got here? SMU traveling to Notre Dame, which would be pretty fun as well. So that's the rankings. What do you guys think? I mean, Josh White says Clemson does have a chance at the top 15 win technically this weekend. They do. And if they beat South Carolina, then I could have the conversation of if Clemson should be in the mix, but there's zero reason why they should be in the mix right now. You lost to Louisville at home pretty handily. You got blown out by Georgia, and you have no good wins. Like, I don't know how you put Clemson over those 3-loss SEC teams right now, the ones that beat Georgia. Like, that's a pretty simple tiebreaker to me. Josh White says, I think Ole Miss is better than Alabama, not just saying that as an Auburn fan. Possibly. The problem is Ole Miss lost to Kentucky. Like, that's a really bad loss. Alabama's loss is Vanderbilt. They're going to a bowl game. Vanderbilt handled Kentucky pretty easily. It's a better bad loss. That's the problem with Ole Miss. You lose to Florida and to Kentucky. Those are both really bad losses. Dalton says SMU 100% should be above Miami. Yeah, I agree. I don't quite get it. If it's Josh White says if it's number 10 Indiana at number 7 Georgia, I don't think that will be competitive at all. Might not be. And again, that could be the result next week. It's all theoretical at this point. SMU Notre Dame, I think that would be a good game. I think SMU is a better team than people are giving them credit for because I don't think many people are paying attention to watching this SMU team. They are good on both sides of the ball. Like they have gotten so much better as the season gone on. They are legit. They have been the best team in the ACC. Not Miami, but the kids committee loves it's Miami for whatever reason. So ACC's in a good spot here. Like my takeaway from the rankings, my biggest takeaway here is that the committee loves them some ACC. You got Miami all the way up to 6, SMU at 9, Clemson at 12. I would put SMU atop that group, obviously. But the ACC there's a real good shot now the ACC gets 2 in. Now, that probably should be the loser of the championship game if it's SMU Miami. If it's SMU Clemson, I don't think Clemson gets in with a loss. But if it's SMU Miami and they're both 11-1 teams, I would put the loser of that game in over Clemson. And I'm really worried what's going to happen is we're going to get a Miami SMU ACC championship game. Miami wins and SMU drops below Clemson because Clemson is Clemson. That is concerning. T. Davidson, if the committee loves the ACC, why isn't Syracuse ranked over Colorado? I mean, Colorado was already ranked, so it's harder to take a team out than to move a new team in. I think the only new team that came in was Kansas State, which had beaten Colorado. So we got a lot of big games this weekend. Like I know every week we kind of react and overreact to these rankings, and then 1 week later everything changes because we get a lot of upsets. Tennessee Vanderbilt, paying attention to that game. Georgia Tech, I am paying attention to that game. South Carolina Clemson, I'm paying attention to that game. SMU versus Cal, paying attention to that. Miami Syracuse, big game. I'm going to be at Texas A&M. Arizona State, wouldn't call that a lock. Boise State hosts Oregon State, which could be interesting. So like a lot of these games this weekend are going to have a big impact on these rankings. And so I try not to overreact week to week unless there's something that just baffles me. And to me, that this week, that is Clemson being at 12, ahead of some 3-loss SEC teams, clearly in the I don't know how you put Clemson ahead of South Carolina. First of all, like South Carolina has better wins and has been playing better. That's not if I'm the ACC, if I'm the SEC looking at these rankings, I'm kind of pissed off. And as much SEC bashing as some of us did over the weekend with those bad losses, I'm still putting some of those teams ahead of Clemson, and some of these others. I'm putting Tennessee and Georgia ahead of Miami, like I don't know. I don't know. T. Davidson wants Georgia Tech ranked. Probably not going to. I mean, hey, beat Georgia. UMass just ran for 200-something yards against Georgia. I'm not ruling out. Brent Key, 2-0 against the spread. He's covered the spread twice in this game against Georgia. I think they could keep it close. I hope so. It's usually a good game. T. Davidson, but would you have Clemson over Bama Ole Miss if they beat South Carolina? So it wouldn't really matter too much. I don't know because Ole Miss whipped South Carolina. Like, that's the reason South Carolina's not higher. Some people are like, South Carolina should be in the mix. No, they lost to Ole Miss and to Alabama. You have to have South Carolina behind those two teams right now. I don't know if there's a path for South Carolina to pass them anyway. I don't see a path for South Carolina into the playoff, pretty much. Clemson is what surprises me. Ben Whitehead, at some point, 3 losses to unranked team needs to count. Ole Miss has 3, Bama has 2. Perhaps that's why Clemson is ahead. Yes, but Clemson also has a home loss to Louisville, who's 6-4, 7-4, and lost to Stanford. Like that was a really bad loss for Clemson, and that's like Indiana doesn't have one of those. Yeah, Indiana not nearly as good as Ohio State, but they don't have many bad wins either. Their only close win was Michigan. So Ole Miss lost at home to Kentucky. Ben says that's fair. But that's why I have Ole Miss behind Alabama too. But Clemson, South Carolina, that's going to be heated. That game is going to be really, really heated. I'm very excited to try to watch that while I'm trying to get to College Station on Saturday. So We'll see. Look, Clemson beat South Carolina, then you get in the conversation. I just don't like Clemson being there right now is my problem. And maybe we just project ahead. But if Clemson is here now and then they beat South Carolina, like that's a real shot at getting in. Um, which I think is maybe my bigger problem right now. I can't put Clemson right now with no good wins behind teams that beat Georgia. That's really what it is for me. And everybody has different opinions. The committee members have different opinions. The committee doesn't have one single thought. I've done the mock committee. You have a bunch of different opinions. You vote them all together, and out pops a result. Ben says could be all moot if Miami loses to Syracuse. Put Clemson in the ACC championship game, even if it loses South Carolina. That is true. Don't sleep on Miami Syracuse. The over-under for that game is like 68.5, I think. Syracuse is one of the best passing offenses in the country. Miami really struggles defensively. That Wake Forest game was closer deep into the second half than the final score indicated. That game's going to have a lot of fireworks. I am looking forward to Miami Syracuse. That does open up a difficult spot for the ACC. If Miami loses to Syracuse, Clemson loses to South Carolina, then Clemson beats SMU, then suddenly you only got one ACC team in there, and they could be seeded lower, which could be a problem. T. Davidson says, a longer question, what is the right balances for wins versus a loss? Example for Notre Dame, does a win over Texas A&M cancel out the loss to NIU? Depends what the win is. Texas A&M is now number 20. It looked better when they were 15 and closer to 10. I'm fine with Notre Dame being number 5 behind Penn State for now. If Notre Dame beats USC handily, I mean, Notre Dame's been rolling is the other thing. The margin of victory in these games, I think, needs to matter too. They have been rolling. And if they roll over USC, I think Notre Dame at that point has to be ahead of Penn State because of the common opponent with USC. But like Indiana, 1 loss, no good wins, but they've dominated almost everybody that they've played. And that margin of victory plays a role, I think, in the way we feel about them. So if anybody else has any other questions or thoughts, put those in there. I hope everybody enjoys your Thanksgiving, by the way. Enjoy the holidays. It's weird that college football finishes around holidays, New Year's, Thanksgiving. It makes it all like frantic. Like I've got a lot of work to do at the time like Thanksgiving's happening. And that's always really interesting and difficult. Ben says, ultimately, the ranking of Notre Dame doesn't matter because the highest they can be in the playoffs is 5th anyway. Yes, it does matter, though, because so right now, Notre Dame as a 7 seed would play SMU, and if they win, they would play number 2 Texas. If Notre Dame jumps Penn State to number 6 seed, they would play number 11, and if they win, they would play Miami. The difference between 5 and 6 is playing an SEC team or likely playing an ACC team. SEC champion or ACC champion. So I think there is a lot of incentive there, which is why the 12-team playoff is fun. And I like this setup because in a way, every slot matters. 1 through 4 matters. Being number 5 matters. 8, 9, the home game matters. Like there are so many stakes here. And it's why we can go bit by bit and have a debate over it. Because if you're Notre Dame, you'd much rather play Miami or SMU or whoever in the second round rather than probably the SEC champion, Texas or Georgia or whoever. So that's what's going to be really interesting and why it keeps changing. If Texas loses to Texas A&M, then we're really kind of throwing everything up in the air and who knows where that's going to go. But it'll be fun. I'm so fired up for this weekend. It has been a long season, but like this weekend, thinking about the rivalry games, thinking about Texas A&M, I'm like rejuvenated and excited and fired up for this. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And the rankings next week could be totally different. So chaos is fun. It's kind of wild. We went from a path for 5 SEC teams getting in to 3 to potentially less, depending on how these last couple of weeks go. That's the joy of college football. You never know what's going to happen. You never know when all these 5-5 teams are going to be top 15 SEC teams. That's what the sport's about. That's why we love it. It's really unique. James Burkett says, kind of sucks that arguably the 2 best teams, Oregon and Ohio State, are locked into a potential semifinal matchup. That is a great point. And because when you play out the bracket, 1 in 5 seeds are on the same side. So you're not going to have that in a championship game, in a national championship game, which is why I wonder the loser of that game, do they drop to 5 or do they drop to 6? Because like I said, 6 is a much better place to be potentially for your path to the playoffs. So, but to the national championship game. So again, each seeding really matters. And it would be weird ultimately if we felt like Oregon and Ohio State were the best teams and they didn't play in the championship game. Now, some people have said, why don't you reseed every round? The highest seed plays the lowest seed available. It's what a lot of pro sports do. The reason is because all of those bowl games in the quarters and the semis will be set when the bracket is set. Number one is going to be closer to the semifinal, closer to them, and then number 2 to the next one. And the reason is those bowl games want to focus on their certain number of teams, your 2, 3, 4 teams that could play in your team. So you don't have to worry about everybody. You're focusing on these teams. And for the reason you don't reseed for the second round, if you're 1 through 4, you want to know who your 2 opponents could be. You don't want to be like, well, anybody could win. We got to prepare for 8 of these teams because we don't know who we're going to play. If you're number 1 Oregon, you want to know, hey, I'm playing Georgia or I'm playing Tennessee. That's the game we watch. Those are the teams we study for. That is why they're not reseeding in the second round and then the bowl game as well. But it does create an uneven field. You're going to have semifinal games, maybe quarterfinal games that feel bigger than potentially the national championship. It is kind of a weird setup, but that's the system we have. The first time we go through it, it'll be learning. My wife's family from Indiana, Notre Dame fans. I got a question today. Hey, can Notre Dame get a first round bye? Like, so this is still a lot of people who haven't been paying close attention to the college football season are still learning how this playoff works. Notre Dame cannot get a first round bye. Only conference champions can get a bye. So if you're annoyed that ESPN keeps explaining over and over and over how the playoff works, how the first round byes work, that is the reason. Because there are a lot of people who are not fully tuned in until the end of the season. So you have to explain it for them because it is confusing. So I understand why that has to go. So if anybody else has anything else, throw it in. But otherwise, appreciate you guys. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. I've been uploading a bunch of YouTube shorts and stuff, clips from our Until Saturday podcast, trying to just kind of grow this thing naturally. So I appreciate everybody who has subscribed. Appreciate everybody who has watched this. I'm having fun. I like people to talk to about this stuff. So thanks everybody for watching. Enjoy the holidays. Enjoy Thanksgiving. Enjoy rivalry week. And pretty soon will be a conference championships and then the playoff. That's going to be a lot of fun. So appreciate you guys. See you next time.